So what we're going to do today is walk through the frequently made mistakes for assignment 2B. These are the ones that I reviewed and gave you back comments as of last night. So I try to group them according to the different topic areas. This is the issues that we see here, starting with something kind of left over from assignment 2A, and actually before that, I think. This is the MovieZX method that converts movies to matches, converts movie matches. And this code is way too complicated. I actually gave a comment on this in the previous frequently made mistakes video, so go back and watch that if you need to. But if you read the specification here, it says call a helper method, and this thing's calling like 5 or 6 methods. Does not need to do any of that stuff. You need to do one thing, very straightforward. So there's way, way too much stuff going on there. So that should be revised. And I'm a little bit dismayed that that was done incorrectly because we'd already covered that in the last assignment. But be that as it may, that needs to be fixed. Likewise, make sure that you consistently refactor your code for assignment 2B with respect to I think this is the timer sync proxy. And this is kind of a holdover from the previous way of doing things, which did not refactor stuff out using call utils execute call. So make sure you do that. By the way, this stuff is all caught by the unit test. So these are things that should be easy to fix. A bunch of issues still with the database API methods using Retrofit. So this should be called search MovieZX, not searchEX. Very clear that that's a problem. If you try to run the tests, you'll get an error, and it says, can't find the call to search MovieZX. So that gives a dead giveaway that you've misnamed the method. So that should be fixed. Again, make sure you put the right syntax in here so that you have the appropriate slashes where you need them. That's missing here. Similar problems here, same kind of thing. Also, I think this is the wrong type. I think this should be a path, not query. And then down here, there's also stuff missing. This is the timed method, so you have to make sure you put the timed call in there, or the timed string in there. So those are all things that are also tested for, so there's really no good reason not to have that stuff fixed, because the tests are flagging it, and should be straightforward to fix the problems. A number of people copied their code over without thinking about what they were doing. You've got to be very careful with that. And they left in the @element collection annotation, which does not work. So you don't need it for this version of the assignment, so make sure you take that out. It actually is incorrect, not just superfluous, but it's incorrect. And also, you don't have to come up with something this complicated for the hash code implementation. I'm not entirely sure what this is trying to do, but it's more trouble than you need to make. You can just use the hash method to hash the integer, and that should be fine. Couple things here. Make sure for the movies, the movie list factor method in the server beans class, make sure you use movie database reader.load movie data. I think the test could be improved to allow this, but it doesn't work like that, so just use this instead. You don't need to have distinct here. There's no issue with worrying about duplicate lines in the movies file. And also, make sure you go and read the specification. It says returns the results in sorted order. And so if you don't sort the results, then you're going to get that test failing and then some other tests failing too, because they expect the results to be sorted. Here is an example of an incorrectly named Spring Data API method in database repository. Make sure you think more carefully about what's being requested. There's an extra word in here that doesn't need to be there, and your code won't work properly if you put that extra word in there. Here is a problem that's left over again from previous assignment. I'm not sure why this is still an issue, because we've gone over this a whole bunch of times. I think every single frequently made mistakes video has talked about this particular method. So we don't have map followed by flat map, use flat map and call search and do a .stream on that. And there's no need to have a compare to. That was something that we've gone over and over again. And there's also no call to distinct here. So that needs to be fixed. By the way, I learned something interesting after spending a lot of time playing around with ChatGPT and other stuff. It appears that you actually want to put distinct before sorted. And the reason for that is, does anybody know why that would be a good thing to do? So if you think about what distinct does, distinct uses a hash set. And so in a linear pass through the data, it'll go through and make sure every item is unique because it'll hash it. And that takes linear time. If you have any number of items that are duplicate, then that will end up with a reduced number of items that you're actually working on after it goes through that process. So then you'll end up using sort. And as you know, sort's an n log n running time complexity. So the less number of elements there are in sort, the faster it'll take, to Skylar's point. So if you do distinct first and there are duplicates, then you will have less to sort. Conversely, if you sort first and then you do distinct, you'll still be taking linear time to do the distinct part, but you'll have to do n log n operations on a larger number. So it turns out distinct should go before sorted. And now that we fixed things by having the hash code method, it should all work fine. So I think don't worry about that for now, but for the next version of this thing, we'll probably switch the order and make the test check for that. OK, down here, looking at search. So make sure you don't put sorted in the wrong place. Down here, please don't call toList followed by .toStream. That's like way overkill. And the tests, at the moment, the tests don't test for that, but the next version of the test will test for that, so you don't need to do that. It'll catch those things. We try to update the tests as we find new and creative ways to do things that could be improved. You don't need to split this code up into two parts anymore. As long as you have the hash code method, then everything works fine to have just a single parallel stream. And likewise, you don't need to declare a local variable. OK, now moving on to the multi-query repository impl file. We're actually probably going to fix this test so that it will accept this solution because it's not a bad solution. Right now, the test wants to see .map string to lowercase here before this call to map, but I think we're going to improve that. So this comment is probably only necessary at the moment, but it could be left here henceforth. Make sure you provide a seed value for reduce that will be a conjunction in case there's no elements that happen to be in the list of queries, which would be weird, but you just need to prepare for that. Down here, this code is missing something that's needed to remove duplicates. And so you'll need to figure out where to add that particular call there. Down here, this code is doing a bunch of things, but you actually want to nest those inside of the create query call or store that in a local variable and pass it in. So you need to be able to, these things return results that need to be chained together and used to create the query. And then down here, it turns out that as long as you're doing this call here, you don't need to call distinct. So that's belt and suspenders, too much work, don't need to do that. So those are the frequently made mistakes I've seen. Many, not all of those things were flagged by the unit tests. I think almost all of them with the next version of the test will be flagged. So hopefully that'll mean that it'll be easier to get your code working correctly before you submit it, although many people did a good job, which was fantastic. And I think this also underscores, yet again, the value of having unit tests, because if you don't have unit tests, then you have to rely on inspection, which is tedious and error-prone, whereas if you have the unit test, then you get a lot more feedback automatically.